there's like a new series on Amazon with called Breath of Fire about this like
Ooh.
lady who called herself a choice of the next lineage of a guru, and it's kind of wishy-washy right now, but it doesn't look like that's a real thing. Anyways, it's like this whole story of this lady
Look at
that
us
built
pulling up our big girl pants.
like a
Pulling up my
whole
bootstrap.
business, like products and services. And she does, of course, like soul business type stuff. Can
Mm-hmm.
tell like a lot of the origins of what's going on now come from this thing. It was like during the boss, girl boss, and all this kind of thing. And it was like the initial like big thing coming out of Instagram, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was getting to the masses because it was not talked about much, and so anybody interested in that type of thing, like a spiritually based business approach, that allowed for feminine sentiment, essentially, um, that blew up. They had blown to the ups.
It was
Yeah,
everywhere.
like her guru was like it's like the initiator of yogi tea, which is like a
Mm-hmm.
$1 billion business. Is crazy, right?
Right.
So it's a lot. It's a lot, but and it's very interesting, and it's very interesting. Like, and the what made I guess it worth doing a series on because it's a literal series, not just one show. Um, not worth, but made it potent enough for a story for people to be attracted to is that she died, and like suddenly, like weirdly.
Hmm.
So that's all. That's like the hook, right, for the show. So unfortunately, I may have to may have to go watch it now. But like
Do
it's
you remember what
interesting.
it's called? Now you've got me. What is it called?
Breath of Fire.
Breath of Fire. Thank you. You said that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm interested. I figure y'all might be interested because it does talk. I mean, they're asking real questions like what's the morality of combining spirituality and business and all this kind of stuff. And where did it go wrong was the conversation because the initial guru was found to be um, around the Me Too movement was like outed as sexual predator. So
The
there's
guru
that.
thing.
Right, and which was a big thing in which like the whole organization started denying the whole thing. It became a thing because people are like, you're trying to silence these women's stories and da 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 da. So they feel like a lot of people that were involved in the organization that are talking about it now feel like it was really that they took a hard line to act as if nothing had happened is
Mm.
what became kind of the shadow quotient to it all because it's directly opposed to everything that they were teaching as far as like feminine sovereignty and all this kind of stuff. So it was like it's a good story in the regard of cautionary tales of like what can go wrong and things like this. Um, yeah. So yeah, that's what interested me about it. So we watched like the first episode. Yeah. Anyways, but but all I'm saying is y'all, because even when we were focusing in on the book and we start with a purpose, and we have to be, I think, in my opinion, in the way that I work, we have to be very careful about the difference between purpose and objective as a goal. And
Mm.
um, and as a motivating impulse. Those are two different things. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like it was part of the story a little bit, but I don't know the full story because I just started watching the show. So I feel like that's what's going to come up around in there. Because this is a very real thing. It's like the whole point of, because it comes from a Sikh tradition, these gurus, um, but not because they bastardize it, which is the problem when we take cultural things without the feeling sense of where they come from. Um, and 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 what happens is that conflation keeps you from prioritizing the real priority. So right now, like we're talking about focusing in on school as priority. And I think if you look at what the truth of this is, that's just the perspective of the author, but the truth is he starts with purpose. Now the purpose he gets to by like naming real things in life and what's powerful about that for you. And 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 um I've always said like your purpose is who you be and not who you are or what you're doing. I'm sorry. Your purpose is who you be, like physically as an energetic being, and not what you're doing. And I think that we have to prioritize that understanding. It's who you be. And then the purpose, like in the activity of the purpose, is just the expression of that beingness. And so if we are looking in the wrong direction, I think it gets real weird real quick, which is how goal setting can cause overwhelm. And I'm very well experienced with that feeling. So I just don't want people to go there. You know, where are you at? Did you
Oh,
get
but I
bumped up?
muted myself. I'm still here, but I
Oh,
muted. Sorry.
Lord have mercy. It
I
made me
did that.
nervous.
We're okay. It's okay. I'm right here talking to myself. La la la.
I'm looking at too many screens. I thought, like,
Brief
did she
aside,
just look
I
at
did
me?
a 15-minute live video 2 days ago, muted.
Oh,
Whole thing.
I've never done that. Yes, I've done that a few times at least.
It's been a good week. It's been a good week.
Yes, yes. Um, but we've done really cool things like gotten documents that may or may not be available on the website, uh, and so that you'll have
Yes.
them available for you because
Through the
it was
magical
available
foresight.
when I downloaded them. So
Thank you, Onifa, for
check it
being
out.
early to the one thing game.
I do my best.
Grateful for you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So yes. So yay. So where do you think we should start? Should we start with the purpose talk?
Start at the very beginning. I think that it could be helpful because that is something, as you were saying, we were looking for these resources and I was sad to see that they didn't seem to still have it. So that was one that I really wanted to find from the book. So I think that could be really relevant. It is so timely, end of year and all that, at least to check in.
Yes.
Sure we're on the
I
same page, right page?
I like it. Um so here we go. My purpose document. So this one is one of the longer ones, but it has these lovely little areas for you to type in what is aligned to you, which is awesome. All right. So one thing, intro workbook, if you follow us through the document, which will be available in the chat or on the page if you are listening to the recording. So the first exercise is what matters. And this is about uncovering your purpose. So we're just looking at, again, these are very outcome oriented. So things that you like to do, 4 or 5 specific activities you're passionate about that make your life exciting, worth living, happy, joyful, meaningful to you. which is the important part. Okay. Why the meaningful activities in your life. So you can write down a few of those, um, and everything in this section. So you can jot down whatever occurs to you first. These may be things you're doing with family, community, a hobby, a sport, right? I think for me, that's always going to be teaching is always going to be one of the number one things I do. It's just like, I don't know why I'm here if I'm not doing this thing. Um, and everything else is kind of nature oriented, whether it's around crystals or going to the park or um, connecting with people in my community has become a purposeful priority. And so depends on what those things are for you all. Um, and this again is what we're passionate about, what makes life meaningful. So I say the difference between that and like a hobby is like, I love to knit. Does it make my life meaningful? No, but do I enjoy it? Is it a good way to for me to just like ground and just be at ease in my life? Yes. So that may be a health habit, but it's not necessarily uh, purposeful what matters for me. But I can, like, I've seen people where it is, and they've been very successful in making that the priority of their life, right? So what's true for you is what's important here. You like that one, Susie?
I like that one. Yes, yes. And that differentiation, right? I really appreciated when I had Amelia Nagoski on my podcast, and she waxed poetic about having hobbies that you don't want to master,
Yeah.
right? So knitting is a perfect example of that. It's something you can do, it busies your hands, it relaxes you, it frees your mind. It's not about mastering the most complex knitting pattern. It's about having something that you can just do for the sheer enjoyment of the doing. So beyond those, we're talking about passions. What matters? The passion.
Meaningful things, activities. Oh, good, good. All right. And then next one, 4 to 5 outcomes. So these are about the goals and why it's important to always think about the outcome as well, not first or as priority, but as a part of the formula, really. Is because it tells you, what elements have to be in the room, right? If we're just kind of like, oh, I would love for my passion to be my purpose, to be my job, to be whatever for the rest of my life. And that's like as far as we go with it, then it's like you get no feedback from your intuition or your brain on that because it's like, okay, that's already happening, actually. That's one of the reasons why it doesn't work to do it. You're never off purpose. Uh, just to send you a general question is not going to give you a better indicator of how to be more on purpose because you're already on purpose. The question is, do you feel purposeful? And so this is about like how are we recognizing that we're being purposeful, right? So the outcomes look like what? Like if I know that I'm teaching on a regular basis, then I know that I have a certain point appointments on my calendar. I know that whether that's people interested or people that I'm teaching, right? So so those are my biggest indicators of whether I'm on purpose or not. And when I get like, and I can get really complacent because I love to chill and I love to read, obviously, and I love to do all these other things. So I can forget that I'm supposed to be teaching because that requires people, and that's not my first thought, right? Right? And so I can forget, and then it always gets to the point where I'm just like, I don't know if I care about life right now. Like I always get into this mad place if my
Mm-hmm.
meaningful activities are not happening, right? So what
And
are the
men is a
how do
big
you know
signal.
it's happening? Yeah.
That's a signal I think a lot of people can get complacent with, right? Like, no, it's, everybody feels that way sometimes, but I think that's an
Yeah.
important compass indicator.
Yeah. And I think bored happens regularly. I know it happens regularly, but I think when I don't think I think we can be sometimes bored or meh with calm because some of us are used to like maybe have grown up in traumatic environments or have a lot of anxiety around
Mm,
maybe just even social standing, this kind of thing that just has made that a norm for you. And we're so used to having that aggravation that we think it's that without it, that life is being boring. That's different.
that is a good point.
Okay.
That is a
We
good point.
actually want calm. Calm is good. Okay. But if you're bored, if you don't find things interesting, if you think like life is boring, that is a more of a red flag, you know? And I used to think, no, that's just my personality. I'm sarcastic. I think life is boring and there's something really interesting here. People are so bad. They're all the same. And blah, blah, blah. No, that lack of interest of life is an indicator of depression, right? And not just like, okay, depression, like that we've normalized as being blah teenagers. No. Like depression that can lead to bad things. So just to recognize it doesn't mean that we should always be happy, but we'd be able to recognize if we are depressed is important so that we can reinitiate and not let it go too long. Re-engage in life. Yeah. Um, Outcomes. So hopefully you got your outcomes.
Mm,
Exercise 2, find the link. So quickly circle the activity that and outcome that
hmm.
means the most. Remember that your rational brain is on a break. So don't think about what would make the most sense, what's logical, what's going to give you all those yummy, bright, shiny objects, right? We're going with instinct intuition here. Here's a good question coming from the one thing question. What's the one thing I can do in my life that would mean the most to me in the world, such that by doing it, everything else would be easier or unnecessary? What I love about this statement is it has that what that would mean the most to me in the world. Because significance is big here. Like the whole point, like if we're goal setting, then one of our ideals is significance. Um, That's just a matter of thought. So, what's significant to you is what's meaningful to you.
Mm-hmm. And I do think it's important for that reminder to keep your thinking brain out of it and use this as an exercise to just look for that resonance, that feeling of alignment.
Absolutamente. Absolutamente. Right. Let's move on. Then we have the shape your purpose. So this one they're asking to call in the community, call close friend, family, or colleague, find out what stands out with them when they think about what your purpose in life may be.
Always
I think this
interesting
is
these exercises when you're calling on others for that reflection. This is not a question that I've been encouraged to send out before. I've had this exercise a couple of different times over. That's a big question to put to other people.
and a
Did
lot of
you,
times it's I don't know how it is for some people. Um,
depends on who you ask.
Depends on who you ask. Um, yeah, I always go back to astrology for a lot of this purpose-centered thing. Um, because like in astrology, especially human design, they literally have functions for this. So in Western chart, it looks like your rising sign. It's how people perceive you as a benefit to them is really the truth of that. They call it the face of you on the Western chart. On the human design chart, it is the personality. It's how people are viewing you and your energy, not necessarily what's meaningful to you about your energy. And this is why we kind of need both sides of it, because as we talked about in astrology was this morning was uh, that we need to have an understanding of how people are hearing you, right? In order for us not to be deaf to what people aren't hearing from you, right? So like if we're deaf, it means we are most likely to be sidelined by unexpected outcomes. Which is again the purpose of my work is like, when people feel like they're not being seen and heard, what has happened is that juxtaposition, like what you think you're saying is not what's actually what people are hearing. And so, or what you're being or what you think you're representing may not be showing up to the people around you. I think the hard part about doing this exercise, like if that's happening a lot, then the people that you're asking are almost equally deaf in a lot of ways. Um, and so it may or may not be useful. I think family, if they have the insight, um, I think family is closer because at least they've seen you when you're a child and this kind of thing. And they're going to always have this sense of like, well, you've always been, right? You've always been curious about the trees and kept picking up rocks off the ground. Like they've always been interested in nature, right? Um, so they're going to have that story for you for sure. Long-term friends too. Yeah. So I think that's what's good about the exercise. And then I think it's good to like for people in business who need to know whether it's useful or not, how people are hearing you now, so that you know how big the problem is. And so you can make adjustments. That. So did you do so then you can you create a comments, incorporate their comments and your information you have from now, and then make a purpose statement. So I don't know, mine was like a million bridges of people who are in resonance with their vibration so the earth can become the priority of humanity, which I don't know. It is a big vision, but I think I have practical approaches that may sound less.
Well, and that's what he talks about in the book. Go big with your big goal and then reverse engineer it, scale it back to get clear on what the portion in is, what's the first thing that builds the foundation for the thing, and where to begin.
Yeah.
The journey of a million bridges begins with one. That's right. One tool. One bolt, one block. Yes. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to take a look at it. I love yours. It's very visionary. Mine is kind of short because I'm playing as we're going along. But the activity, I mean, I had a couple of different activities. And then the outcome is kind of what I was playing with can this be my one thing? What I really feel passionate about, not really tied to one activity. But if I was to choose one from column A and one from column B, then I land on speak to inspire others. Because the outcomes that are important to me are inspiring others to have an empowered mindset.
Ooh, yeah. Beautiful. I love that. I love that. Yeah, and I think if it again, that was from this morning, sorry. But
Y'all are
the
jumping in
simpler we
mid-conversation, but that's
are,
just how it is because that's the day we are having. We're in
That's
it.
the day we're having. But yeah, the clearer it is, like the more simple it is, the more clear it is, right? Like for me, I got lost a little bit in the vision piece because I find visioning like really like at least at that time I did this worksheet. It was kind of ethereal to me. Um, and so but you know, what's really grounding to me and going back over this is like what I thought I was doing. That
Ooh.
sounds a little patronizing to myself, but it's true. Like I thought I was doing this thing, and like what was actually happening was that that it was becoming like kind of an outside perspective on how it would look to other people for that to happen. And so I'm like, okay, it wasn't that bad. It's not like that off and from what I would say now. It's just in a different uh, viewpoint than I would say now. And that's what I think is really cool about doing this kind of work because it doesn't have to stay the same to still be important, relevant, and continue to help you to clarify what that truth will be and continue to be for yourself. Um, so yeah.
And and I want to go back to what we were talking about last week when we were talking about the book is, oh, he really puts an emphasis on not being afraid to fail because it's a part of evolving and growing. And because if you're not sure where to begin, begin because it's going to become clear if you're moving in the right direction or not. So,
Yeah.
refinement is part of the process, which I have an appreciation for.
Uh, so much about the refinements. Yes. Yes. Well, and it's so interesting that I can feel so clearly like the intellectualized version of what I wrote down. And then like now a lot of this year has been about like being in tune with my heart and understanding how it is speaking, and having that be a clarifier. And so like that's why it's like also I don't I think before I would have been like, what the hell was I trying to do? And then I would like kind of reverse in time to figure that out in order to function. It's a lot of nonsense that's not necessary. And now I'm just like, yeah, no, like I get what I was doing. Okay, not doing that anymore. But kind of also at the same time having a clearer stance of, oh, this is my approach right now, and it's also in that vein, you know. So, and that's one of the ways he talks about dissecting this, making it a actual path in our productivity as how we are applying it. So, what's the next part? The next part is set a priority to be productive, right? So the priority piece, he also has a document for.
Okay,
Am I making this
more
up?
resources. I was drawing my iceberg because I was invited to doodle because there's an image in the document.
There is an
Yes,
image in
what's
the
below
document.
the waterline? There's the $1 million question. Let me get my.
Yes, so productivity. So if we were writing our little mountain, it would be you would have that purpose as the grounding source at the bottom of speaking for inspiration. And the priority would be like, how are we speaking for inspiration?
So is the resource
Right?
for this one, is that the GPS template
That's a good question because I think the GPS,
or the 411?
I think it's the 411.
Okay, got you.
So yes, as we prioritize, because that's when you start putting into time blocks and the calendar. Okay. 411 is also like how he refers to the 10,000 hours of doing the thing that you're here to do. So it's when you invest that amount of time, you're guaranteed a level of mastery based on stuff. And So that's what he recommends, that you commit to that by building a time block to do that daily. Um, and I kind of agree on this one. Now, do I do it? No. Like, I mean, there's a lot of factors for that. But I think it if you are extremely purpose and goal oriented, that is a good idea, right? Um, and you really want to see those outcomes. It's a good idea. Um, so yeah, so really it's just saying what is the first thing. So like the figure I pulled down for this, by the way, is the figure 24 um, in the figure document. I don't know how else to call it. Um, so let me show y'all that for a second. It's back up. All right, just share that
And I'm dropping
image.
in the chat, I made copies of the spreadsheets that they're sharing resources now through Google Docs. So these will be templates that you can access.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, the someday goal is that purposeful goal, right? It's like, okay, and this is how that would look like an outcome of what I is most meaningful in my experience, as an outcome and as influenced by the people that are meaningful to me, right? Um, so that's the someday goal. What's that one thing we're gonna do someday? And then they call this goal setting to the now, right? So this is, what does it look like to make that into what am I doing right now? Okay. So this is the lengthy process of the 411. It it doesn't have to be lengthy, I don't think, but it is something that you can get bogged down in kind of self-doubt if that's a tendency. I don't know, this for me, so I don't know about the other people. But so yeah, so what does that look like in 5 years? Now that you put a time frame on it, like now I'm freaking out, right? This is where I freak out. Um, so yeah, how does that sit with you? And do you have any feedback on that, Susie?
I want to add too, so this image is one that I captured from the Kindle copy of the book, and it is in the book notes along with section 13 notes. So you can also see this there. And yeah, I think, it goes back to that thing people like to say. We overestimate what we can do in the short term and we underestimate what we can do in the long term. And so I like that this gives you permission to just shoot for the moon and then kind of put the foundation under it and leave a little space for magic. We all know the synchronicities, the magic, and the manifestation.
Yes.
So, we don't have to chart every single step in the path, but this helps it feel much more doable because I really struggle with swimming in the soup. you know, the exercise we went through to come up with my purpose, if you had asked me that, I might have come up with something that's pretty close to that. But I still every day sit down and say, okay, which one of the 5 things that I'm doing right now should I start with? Because I struggle with this kind of clarity that he's giving the framework for. So I really love that he keeps coming back to keep it simple, keep yourself clear, and spoiler alert at the end, we'll talk about being okay with the chaos, right? Like
Yeah.
some things are going to be a bit of a mess because not everything is a priority. So I appreciate that permission too.
Yeah, so that's the process, and I think this is important because like when we have the big rocks, so to speak. So this is a big rock. This, I think, in this environment, we tend to orient to business and what it means to have our message out in a way that's the meaningful message for ourselves out, in the world. And so, in this big rock is essentially a purposeful career based idea, and we all know that there are other really big rocks, right? So we have our primary relationship. Um, we have our family, right? and then we have community, we have financial, we have health, right? I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything. I have this written down, folks, but it's not right in front of me.
I know. I'm looking
So
at this one and I'm like, I know this image and I saw it as I was scrolling through something, so I might be able to share a screen too. Maybe it was towards the end of the purpose
let
document.
me stop then. Yeah, I'll stop the share. Like Preston.
Yeah, here it is. Let me scale
So,
it up a little bit. All right.
and
And also with a little advanced, I want to pick it a portion of my screen. Well, let's come over here. This one. This portion
there
of
we
my
go.
screen. How about them apples?
Spiritual, missed that one. And then personal, which I think again are those things that just make you happy, like knitting for me. Um, and I think for my job and for my business, I do think those are two different things. Like your job within your business is not necessarily business, although we do conflate those things as solopreneurs. And the reason why that's important is the hat that you're wearing. Okay, like when we're doing our job, that should be relevant to our purpose. It should look very much like our purpose. Like when we're doing our business, it may look like the things that allow us to do our job, right? And so there's that. Cool. I think immediately you have to question, right? And I think this is what they know, which they don't address. And which is that as soon as you see this, you realize, well, that I mean, in order for life to be functional, there's got to be a one thing for all of these sections. Um, at least one thing, right? And if you're anything like me, there's at least 10 things associated with every one of these sections, right? Um, and so and so it's kind of like, how do we decide what the one thing is in a moment, right? And it comes back to that prioritization piece. Again, I don't know if life would like make any sense to me if I didn't have a process of prioritization. And largely it is this, right? I mean, in the function of how my body works. So my body has a tendency towards overwhelm and anxiety, right? So I have to literally start with my process in order for me to even have the access of being clear on a priority. So for me, like I'm actually prioritizing at least my mental health. You know, I think of it as health, but maybe primarily mental health in order for me to even be on purpose, right? And so it again, what actually gets prioritized may look different to everybody. And then once I've oriented myself in my mental and spiritual health, then I can move forward in the career priority, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for a lot of people, this does look different. And that's kind of why I decided to build like an organizational framework that helps people to realize how they are shaping what they do, um, and what's working for them. And that doesn't look the same for everybody, you know? So I think that is pretty clear. Do you think you need more on that?
No, I think that's great. I think that's helpful for me. I hope that's helpful for folks. Let us
Yeah.
know.
And then time blocking.
Hmm.
So that's
This
like
always
chapter
comes up.
what, 15? Or I don't know, I've lost track.
Let me take a look. Yeah, because it's in the, oh goodness, now my Zoom screen's taken over. Time block. Yep, you got it. Section 15. Time block your one thing and protect your time block at all costs. I like his put up a sign idea. I like the story in the
Yeah.
book actually when he talks about his wife said, I'm sorry, that's not in alignment with my one thing right now. I can't do that thing you're asking me to do for you, darling. Don't we love it when we get those reflections back at home? And
Yes. That's what we're
let's
here for,
celebrate
folks,
that
to mess
progress.
up other people's days. Um, or
But protecting
let's
that time
interrupt
is
that.
difficult.
Um, it is. It is very
Protect your
much so,
peace.
especially when it comes to relationships and family. And he does talk about that, and he always talks about like it is what it be. What was one of the books you read this year too? I think what's the name of the book? Oh my God,
This is a fun quiz. Tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me.
it's
What do
the
you,
poet dude,
oh, David White. He was amazing. The
White.
Three Commitments.
Yes, this comes up in that book, you
Yes.
know, um, and it's just that, like, yeah. He says that's what is interesting to me about even the title of the book. It's not like the important commitment. It's like the three that are constantly being juggled, and partnership, and is for one of them. And so, yeah, and then your career and your objective of, purposeful life type thing. And so it does conflate, but he gives this example of the poet. Oh, shit, which one was it? Elizabeth? No. Um, shit. Um, I don't know. But a writer. No, not a poet. It was a novelist.
Okay.
Um, but she would literally write at the essentially what we would call a coffee table in the middle of the living room with her sisters and random people walking by constantly.
Yes. Was it Emily? Was it?
Maybe,
Yes, absolutely. You will find a way, right? You have
yeah.
to build the skills. I mean, it's beautiful to live in a world where you get your sacred time block. You start in the morning because that's when your willpower is strong after you have a meal, so you're not working on empty and all of these things that he encourages you to do. But sometimes your space is in the living room. And he does acknowledge that. Sometimes we're taking care of our parents or our kids. And sometimes we have to kind of barter and bargain in order to find a way to support the space. Ask someone else to pick up some slack for you so you can have your sacred time and be willing to do the same for them so they can have theirs, right? So that's when collaborators and co-conspirators really come in handy. I mean, he talks about accountability. He has a worksheet for that too. But it has to be a method that works for you. But that's when somebody who's really aware of where you are and where you want to be going can help advocate for you and help you hold on to that. So even if it's at the coffee table with your sister and your mother dancing around. So great. So true.
So available, I'm sure, for so many people. Um,
Like, what do I
so
have to complain about?
it is crazy. Like I can't, to this day, I'm still not quite, I'm sure I would have to adjust, right? Because that's life. And at the same time, it's hard enough. Like it's hard enough to focus. It's hard enough to do the thing that was like clearly my intention. Um, those things are things I still work on a daily basis. And so for me to also have like kids and dogs and whatever else have you happening at the same time, I don't know. I don't know if we make it. I think God knew that, which is why I don't have children.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like it's a lot to be me, and it would be a lot more with children.
Just
So I think you got to give yourself a lot of grace around things like that. I don't know how y'all do it, honestly. I really don't.
we are here
So
to
you
celebrate what you do.
absolutely, absolutely, and that every little bit is progress, is a success, and just even taking the time yourself for yourself to have these questions and to set these priorities, I think is stellar life doing, um, for anybody really. But yeah, just making the time to make the important thing. I think it's really impressive. So, yeah, you guys. So that is okay. And then they have this cool challenge. Oh wait, no. Let's do 411, which I think is
Alrighty.
just pretty to just show people how it looks if you can get your shit together. All right, so I want
Is
to say
it?
things like that. I need
Is
all
that
of us to get our shit together.
the pretty external expression?
Right.
Good luck
Well,
to
that's,
us.
I mean, I'm highly motivated by beauty. I know what I'm motivated by, okay? And sometimes it's really pretty to have everything in its little box on the lines
Much more satisfying. That is
with
true. The blanks have
beautiful,
been
vibrant
filled.
splashes of color. Like, yes, I'm down for that life. So let's look at what are the other documents to tell you, like the goal setting guide has all of this wonderful little possibility in it. Sharing the screen again.
Goal setting guide. I have that one. Do you have that one?
Yes, so goal setting, the kick-ass guide to goal setting, and that's all you need to know about that. All right, and then we have what we've done up until now. Long-term goals are centered around your purpose. The GPS is in what time frame, okay, and then to the now, okay. The 411 are the things that tell us that we're writing those markers out that goal, right?
I like
So
it.
it's
So
just
this
giving
is a really
you more
helpful
explanation.
document. The one thing guide to goal setting, the download is really helpful because it shows you in what order then to use those. And I feel like it's going to give us a little more insight into the GPS and the 411. Putting it
Yeah,
all together.
I like this one. I like this one. This is kind of the one I think I ended up just choosing over everything else, anyways. Um, so this the 5 year breakdown we were just talking about again, and then it tells you, okay, now that you have that, and that's this, right? Then we can start putting them on these little lineys. But then it gets really exciting because now you're like, okay, personal and business. What about all those other circles? There's lots of circles, right? So this can get a lot, right? I and what I do about that, because again, I told you about my personality, so that's all you need to know. And what I do about that is I rarely go past 3 on anything. Like even my daily task list, I rarely go past 3. I may have a running list of everything that I imagine would be lovely to be done, but I don't bring that to my day. Like if I'm looking at that list is um, what I call my 2 week planning session, right? So I have a time block to plan my planning, y'all. That should tell you a little bit about what it takes to organize my brain.
I have a time block for that, but I ignore it.
Yes, I do too. I
Truth
do too.
times.
Like
But
and
together we can do better.
that's the magic of time blocking. It's like, in my opinion, and this is how I do it. And like, I know like the serious people might not agree.
But aren't they really in our book club?
I don't know. I don't know if they are.
We're making this work
Um,
for us, sovereign spirits. We are making this work for us.
so how this looks for me is I set up a time frame for something. I and unless it's something that I have somebody else in which I'm accountable to, like a meeting, a client, a business buddy, I it's not a real thing to me, right? It's like a suggestion, and that's just the honest truth. But why do I have it? Because y'all, I've never been diagnosed, but generally function like an ADHD person, right? So if I don't see it, it's not happening ever, right? So at minimum, it's giving me this. oh, I think I passed that marker before without doing that for the last maybe a couple months. It is a priority for me. Let me do it. What it does is it like there gets to be a point where it's like, hmm, I've all of a sudden, that's the fourth time I've seen it. That must have mean there's time that has passed. Right? Right? Because as an ADHD person, I may not cognitively understand that, but I can tell because I've seen it four times, right? So, in other words, it's just a way for me to be accountable to myself and keep track of what I'm being accountable to without, again, I do it without the judgment because I'm kind of just embrace this is just the way I am. This is how my mind works. And so I may pass 3 or 4 2-week planning periods where it's just like, so last time I did 2-week planning, right? But for the likelihood that I would miss a whole quarter is almost zero. And the difference that makes in me and my business is huge, right? And so that's what I'm trying to get to here. Like these are goalposts that tell us, like, oh, I did want this to be further along on this in this regard, or I wanted this to be happening more regularly in this regard. Why? And then revisit the whys behind that. If it's been like I honestly look at it and I'm like, okay, that's I let it go 6 weeks this time. Like, is this still a priority for me? Right? Like, and just get honest with myself. Is this truly a priority, or what did I choose as my priority instead? Is that my new priority? And just be honest with myself, right? And then yeah, it'll just clear that up, and you might actually eventually get it done, which is
I love that.
exciting,
That's the
right?
feminine intuition approach to male planning.
Yeah.
I
I mean, it's
notice that
so
I'm
pretty
avoiding
with the
this thing.
numbers, right?
Is there a reason that I am avoiding the thing, or is the thing
Yeah.
really not a priority anymore? Masculine priorities would be like, nope, it's on the list. I must ignore everything else. And feminine intuition says something else feels important right now. Or why am I avoiding the thing? I can get real with that. Again, there's options. It's not a clear cut and dried, the system says this is the process.
Yeah, but like when we take the time to do these things, then we can actually have something to review,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then now it's not as overwhelming. Again, this is why it's so what I've loved about having these processes is that I used to like look at my life and be like, I have so much I want to do, and it was all in my head, and I felt like there's no way, and I would just give up, right? Like, and that was depressing. See the cycle, right? Like, and so just to get out of that feeling like the whole of the pile of the things that I have not done is in front of me, this has improved my life in so many regards in that way, you know? So it's vital to me, in other words. So I prioritize it, right? So look how pretty it is, right?
This is
Oh
great.
my
So I do love
gosh.
the one thing guide to goal setting. That's where he's really got all of these worksheets. It's nice to have the Google document templates because you can make a copy of my file, you can add it to your Google Drive, you can use it through all your planning, but this is a nice getting started primer, especially as you familiarize yourself with the process.
And I give you a little hint, like, so I'm building an organizational system. Like, how do I help myself and other people implement all of the circles, right? And here I call this like he has it as strategy to get to the goal, right? And for me and what I've seen in my clients and myself, um, there's more going on than that. There's like the spirituality piece is always in play. And so it means what that means. What that means that you're always making adjustments in your mindset, which then therefore may change your strategy. So I have all of those accounted for. And then again, based on who you are, you're choosing the priority of that. So for again, a lot of me and my clients, most of us are prioritizing spirituality, right? And that's the mindset of, and then how we function from there, right? Um, and so, and that evolution that allow that that's what spirituality is, evolution of awareness and understanding. So in those evolutions that we're allowing those things to adjust and the priorities to be shifted as needed, which is what we're talking about before, right? So just a little bit of what is coming. And then, and then all of a sudden it starts to, when you can do this, I mean, if you can just do this with one thing, which is what he's saying, like
I was going
just
to say
the
Gary
most
would
important thing
applaud
is your
that.
purpose. The one thing is your purpose, because the truth is the purpose is your spirituality. It's your beingness, it's your vibration, it's your essence. Yeah. And then that, if we're just doing everything based on that, then the other priorities actually are being centered as a process of supporting the purpose. Okay. So that is how it does actually, it does in some ways make a lot of sense to just focus on your purpose. Yeah. Because then you'll, like, that's what happened for me. It's like my purpose became important enough and clear enough that I started working on my health to be able to support that in a bigger way. Right. So the other things became important. Like, it's important to get my finances in order if I was going to be an effective person on a day-to-day basis for my clients, right? If I'm always worried about money, then how am I showing fully? These things, like in getting that as in order, right, became a support to my purpose. So, and to me, that, at least for my people, is usually how it works. Like the focus comes from the drive and the passion of the purpose. So, you think we did a good job? You think we
I
did talk
love
about our
it. I hope
stuff?
that makes it more applicable for folks, and I do think it's exactly on time. I used to be part of a mastermind where we were really, really stringent on quarterly planning, and I put quarterly plan days on my calendar, more of the planning blocks that I tend to utterly disregard. But 'tis the season of the planning.
It
And so
is.
as we've said all the way along in this book club, it's in time and on time and perfectly applicable now to kind of having been ruminating on this, get it down on paper and then let it start to evolve and see where it wants to go.
Well, and just so y'all know, Susie and I are bouncing around. Instead of doing book club in December, thinking about doing what I call my rest period work, right? Which is essentially reviewing the year, deciding priorities, um, but from a place of rest, right? Um, and so this, how do you do that? How do you even know when your 2 week planning period is? Rest period is how I know. Like, how do I, you know, how did you even get it in the calendar? How did you think that through as an ADHD dominant process? And the answer is rest period. Like, stop long enough where the first thing can only be the first thing. Um, and and it starts with planning and planners for me. Okay, I am a little obsessive about this. I have, I think this year I have 3 planners and a journal, so that doesn't count, right? And and a writing notebook, so I have a lot of paper. So, but that's how I start. I literally look at the cycles of the year. I look at my astrology. That's the first thing. My astrology is my compass of my spirituality. Without it, again, I get distracted. I get so distracted because everything becomes important, right? And then I get lost. And so these are the tools that I use. Astrology is the tool that I use to orient myself in time because I have no sense of time, right? Um, and then planning is the tool I use to prepare what I'm creating, right? So I just think it's important to me. So that's why I do talk about it a lot.
I'm excited to get to have that opportunity. I think it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it too. Every year as Monifa's rest period comes along, this little envious part of myself says, "Oh, I wish I could do that too." And I put it on my calendar this year, and I still have client appointments running through that time and work, etc. So rest looks different for everybody. And I think if I'm excited, I think that'll be a really helpful session to share. And so hopefully you all agree because you're invited to do it with us.
Yes. So, yes, and that would be earlier in the month because my rest period starts on December 20th. And so there's nothing scheduled after that. So we don't have a date specifically as yet, but once we have that, it'll be in the page of the Buy Me Coffee page.
Yes.
Um,
Looking forward
anything
to
else,
it.
Sissy?
No, my head is busy. I've got ideas in my notepad. I'm going to print up my workbook so I can scribble. I like to scribble in the margins. So I'm going to start having some fun with it.
Sounds good. All right.
And our next Verve+Vision meeting has a slightly different time. It falls right around the Thanksgiving holiday and some stuff going on, at least in this house. Monifa has been very patient with me as we tried to land on a new time. So we are going to meet for our next Verve+Vision live stream on Friday morning, Black Friday. While you're doing your online shopping, join us. We'll be streaming live. The plan is 9 a.m. on Friday the 29th. 29th at 9. So we have a morning session while
Yes.
everybody's home and recovering from Thanksgiving. And we'll be
Yeah.
online then.
And we're going to go through what we did this year. So, like, if you missed anything, then you'll be able to check out all the cool stuff we learned this year.
Yes, yes. We did not select a book for the month of November. We're going to do a recap live stream, and then we're planning this planning session. So
Yes.
it's
Oh,
time
and with
to
our astrology, by the way, so that if y'all haven't popped on the other side to get the full podcast that
friends,
includes the astrology for the month ahead. So December.
do it. Do it. You need this in your pocket. Everybody needs a pocket Monifa until she makes an app or sells her own planning software. We just have to keep popping online and drinking up this greatness. Thank you, Monifa, for bringing your insights and your wisdom from all of your schools and practices. I love the way that it distills down into tools we can use. It's my favorite.
Yay. You're so welcome. Yes. Creators will rule the world.
That's right. Creatrixes all the way up. Thank you,
That's my
friends.
master plan. Mwah. Mwah.
We'll see
We will
you
see you next
soon.
time. How do I do it? Stop.